Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to everyone.
Assalamualaikum, Prof.
Hi everyone.
Good evening, Prof.
How's everyone doing?
Prof.
Chayang, I saw your mouth move but no sound. I think you're muted.
Oh, I said good. Good evening, Prof.
That's good to hear. Okay, so everyone's coming online now. Oh, Mr. Nazrul, are you at the beach?
Yes, sir. No beach. This is
Looks like a beautiful beach.
yes. This is a small beach in Bangladesh. Name is Kuakata.
Oh, very nice, beautiful.
Yes, sir.
If only we could be at the beach, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's get started, I guess. We got 25 people online. All right, so welcome to week 10 of our qualitative research class. So let's just start by
Screenshot.
putting up the class. Okay. All right, so before we start, just a few housekeeping matters to attend to. So go ahead, please, everyone go ahead and do the attendance, clicking, signing in. Oh, it says WhatsApp. No, don't listen, that's a mistake. It shouldn't say using WhatsApp. Sign in as usual, use the Pucha Blast to sign in, okay? That should not say using WhatsApp. That's from last year, actually, before we had attendance on Pucha Blast. So just go ahead and use the Pucha Blast as usual for the attendance. Okay. And just a few housekeeping issues. We have not been given a date yet for our final exam. But as I wrote in the synopsis, the course synopsis, the assignment 6, the last assignment, the thesis critique. So that one I said is due after the semester. So usually I'll ask students to submit that on the day of the final exam. Okay, so it gives you a little bit of time because the code book assignment 5 is due week 14, right? So I don't want to burden you with 2 assignments at the same time. So you have the code book due week 14, and then assignment 6 is due. Usually the final exam is a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks after that. So gives you time to do the assignment 6. Okay, so once I get the date for the final, I will let you know. And then assignment 6 will also be due on that day. Okay, so just so it's clear for everyone. All right. And so that assignment 6, the thesis critique, again, is really aimed at helping you to, first of all, boost your literature review to some degree. Are you guys familiar with ProQuest dissertations? Is anyone familiar with ProQuest digital dissertations? Anyone? Okay, I'm assuming
Can always explore.
Yeah, no, because for this assignment, I think it's a good idea if you go and use ProQuest to locate your thesis. Of course, you can use UPM. So the library, our UPM library has, let me just pull it up here. Sorry, 1 second. Just give me a second.
I use ProQuest to search for article journals only.
Oh, okay.
I'm not familiar with the dissertation part.
Yeah, I really like ProQuest for dissertations is really fantastic because they got thousands of theses and dissertations from all over the world, but many from there are a lot from the US, but I'm just trying to see here. I'm pretty sure we still subscribe to it. ProQuest, yeah, here. So if you go to easy access on the library, sorry. Can you guys see my screen on the library?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you go to easy access and then you go to the resource list here, the list of databases, and you go to P, you scroll down, you see ProQuest dissertations. Okay. And so if you go in there, I'm assuming we still have an account. Oh, we still have a subscription, but you know, yeah, we do. I'm assuming it's also full text. So you can, as you see here, you can do full text. You can click on the full text box here, so you get only full text dissertations, and then you can put in your search terms according to your what you're looking for. So if you're doing, you know, like it's an example. I can't think offhand.
Online learning, distance learning.
Okay, student engagement in among high school and US. This was high school. Okay, and then you want to do phenomenology. Okay, now those are fairly descriptive terms. Let's see if it pulls up anything. Okay, so I pulled up 20, as you can see here. No, sorry. Oh, sorry. No, it pulled up 74,000. Of course, it doesn't mean that they're all specifically related to that topic, but you're going to get a lot of theses, of dissertations from all over. So the very first one, Phenomenology of Student Engagement During High School Restructuring, you know, there's just so many. It just gives you so many. Okay. You can see, and they're all very much related to the topic. Lots of phenomenological studies on high school students, their engagement. All right, so I would really go ahead and use this database to locate a good thesis for your assignment 6. At the same time, you can also just use the UPM. We also have our UPM e-theses. Okay, so here on the home screen, the library homepage, you scroll down to the bottom corner, right? So I just used easy access to get the ProQuest, but there's also a link here for UPM theses, e-theses, and it's not working at the moment. I don't know why. The link is not working at the moment. But anyway, you can also just scan, you know, you can put in your search terms just for theses in UPM. Of course, you might not get exactly what you're looking for, but you might find something. There's also,
we can access it from easy access too, Prof.
Oh, we can.
Yeah,
Yes.
in
Okay.
easy access under U for
Okay.
UPM
Oh, there
ETC.
it is. Yes, thank you. Yeah, okay. So you can also do easy UPM through easy access. All right. So you may, I mean, just because of the issue with formatting and you want to look for a thesis that's a similar format and so forth, you may start at UPM. But if you don't find anything that really, you know, suits what you're looking for, then I would expand your search to use ProQuest. All right. And like I said, this assignment is really supposed to help you to locate a thesis that's, you know, somewhat similar or at least familiar to what you're studying, so that you can not only enhance or increase your knowledge of the subject of what you're studying, so it acts as a sort of literature review, but also you can look at how the topic is presented, how the problem statement is written, how the study is framed, right? How they use theory. Okay, so you can really think of it as a template, you know, or at least possibly as a template for your own thesis. Okay, so yeah, obviously UPM theses are going to be the best because of the formatting issue. You want to find a thesis that's using a similar format as ours. But some of the universities in excuse me, overseas, their formatting is different, so that might be a little bit confusing. But between these two databases, you got thousands of theses at your fingertips. Okay, so definitely choose one that's going to be useful to you. All right, don't just choose any topic or any thesis. All right, definitely try and find one that's going to be of use to you. All right. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. Any questions about that? Any concerns?
Is there any particular type of, I mean, like, I know we're supposed to appraise a qualitative thesis. Does it mean that we need to choose one that is fully qualitative or
Yes.
how?
Yes. Yeah, for this assignment, you need to choose one that's fully qualitative.
Okay.
Yeah, and it says that in the course synopsis. If you look at the synopsis, it states that. It stresses that. Okay, so even though some of you may be doing mixed method for your PhDs, for this assignment, please choose a thesis that's fully qualitative.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for asking that question. Any other questions? Okay, so I can close that out. Okay, so that's assignment 6. And so next week is going to be our, inshallah, will be our in vivo tutorial class. So there'll be no reading presentation next week. Okay, so I will be just sort of leading this in vivo tutorial. And for those of you who are planning on attending, which I hope everyone attends, but for those of you who are, maybe you're already very familiar with in vivo and so forth, I understand if you don't want to attend, but for those of you who are not, I would definitely recommend attending the class because it'll at least give you a taste, a flavor for qualitative data analysis software. Okay, and in vivo is not the only one, of course, but it's one of the more popular ones, and I use it. So for that class, I put the link in here, and this link will take you to the in vivo page where you can download the free version, the trial version of the software. Okay, so if you see in the upper right hand corner, there's a try in vivo link. So you can just click on that, and then you can download the software, the latest version. I think it gives you about 2 weeks for you to use it. The free trial, so you can play with it. So I would just do it like a day before, or a couple of days before the class next week, so that you can follow along during the class. If you don't have it and you're not following along, it's really, really boring to watch someone use software, without actually trying it yourself. Okay, so, and then I hope there'll be time for us to actually relook at some of the analysis that we're doing in the class manually, to sort of do the same thing using in vivo, so you get a feel for how you actually do coding and so forth. Okay, so we will be doing that next week, inshallah. Okay, so this link is I've included here in Putra Blast. You can just click on it. Okay, and then after that, week 12, there'll also be no reading presentation. So that entire class, we will just spend our time doing more analysis. Okay, so more practice on that, using the transcripts, developing our code book. All right, so just more of that. That is, data analysis and qualitative is just something that the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, the better it is. Because first of all, you're going to have to do this for your assignment 5, but also, of course, for your thesis work. It's really important that you get experience doing it. So I'm gonna, week 12, we'll just be doing hands-on the whole class. Okay, so we're calling it analysis lab. Okay, so after tonight, the next 2 weeks, there'll be no reading presentation. We'll have some special sessions. Okay, are there any other housekeeping issues that anybody needs to bring up, or you'd like to ask, or questions about anything really? Anything from previous weeks that we've discussed that you'd like to?
Prof, can I ask about the assignment?
Of course, sure.
Is there any rubric for the thesis critique? Or we critique
Yeah.
this
In the course synopsis. Do I also have it in Putra Blast? Let me check. I think I put it up in Putra Blast too. But it's in the course synopsis, the rubric. Yeah, here's the rubric. So this is what you're expected to. I give you a very detailed outline of what you should include in the critique. Okay, so it's all here. All the content is here, and even the breakdown of points is here as well. Okay, so for each section, it gives the breakdown of the weightage for each section. All right. So just follow this outline when you do the critique. All right. Make sure you have all the. A lot of students, for some reason they leave out these last two parts here. All right. So study redesign is like if you could recommend to the author changes you would make to the study. Like what would you do differently than the author did? Okay. Just a small section on that. And then quality of writing. So comment on the quality of writing. Was it easy to read? Was it difficult to read? What was was it sloppy? Was it well produced and presented? Stuff like that. Okay, so comment on the quality of writing as well. All right, and so it's a 30-point assignment. Okay, does that answer your question, Razia?
Yes, thank you, Prof.
Okay.
So we attach together our thesis into the Putra
No,
Prof?
You don't. No, I don't expect a 300-page thesis to come with the. No, just the if you could just give the either if you want, because like with all the technology, you can just do a snapshot of the cover page or at least the reference, the citation, the full reference. Okay, so either one of those is fine.
Assalamualaikum, Bro.
Salam, Wafi, yeah. Go ahead.
I ask something about writing skill, bro.
Okay.
When I look at the article, the author used the word I blah blah blah. And when look at that, is it okay to use the word I or the researcher in our thesis, Prof?
Yeah, that's a good question. So that deals with voice. Do you use first person or do you use third person? So first person is when you refer to you write in an active voice, meaning I do this, I do that, I collected the data. Okay, so that's the first person voice. So that is actually in the field of qualitative research, it's actually completely acceptable. The only thing is that in UPM, a lot of the for whatever reason, a lot of our academic colleagues in UPM, they don't prefer that style. And so I've gotten that feedback from other students that their supervisors don't allow them to write that way. They prefer the traditional kind of conventional, I should say, third person, all right? So the researcher did this, the researcher did that. So that's third person. So I think to play it on the safe side, I would write in third person, okay? For UPM's purposes. But just know that in the field itself, it's perfectly acceptable to write in first person. So like if you're ever writing an article or something for a journal, feel free to use first person. What's funny about that is that even in a lot of nowadays, especially you see more of this, even in quantitative studies, there's more and more use of first person. So they kind of mix. Usually in quantitative studies nowadays, they'll mix. In certain parts of the methodology section, they will refer to, we did this, we collected our data, etc. So they use that active voice, but in other parts of the article, they'll use passive, the passive third person. So yeah, I would just, to play it safe in UPM, I would stick with the conventional third person. All right, just so that it doesn't make more work for you later. Okay. But your supervisor, I think she's okay with first person. But your examiners, it depends on who your examiners are. That's the problem. The examiners sometimes don't like it. And so.
Prof.
Yeah.
For our assignment critique, can we use first person?
Sure, of course. Yeah, in this class, you're more than welcome to use first person. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Qualitative research is a very personalized type of study, right? Because the researcher is very active in the whole process. So that's why it's acceptable to use first person. It also reflects the fact, it reflects ownership and it reflects accountability, because all the decisions that are made in the context of doing the study, the methodological decisions are from you, right? And so it just sort of conveys the idea of you know, it's your work, it's your study, it's your perspective, it's your sort of vision for it, for the study. It's all coming from you. That's the, you know, the researcher as instrument kind of worldview is being represented by doing that in a lot of ways. So. Anything else?
Prof, I am wondering about our final exam. What is it about?
It's about qualitative research.
Okay.
Okay, this is week 10. If you'd like next week, I mean, to me it's kind of early, but if you want, I mean, I can do the overview of the exam if you're ready for it. To me it's kind of early, but usually I'll do it in like week 13 or 12. I don't know. But yeah, maybe week 12 we'll do it, because week 12 is just, we're going to spend the whole week doing analysis. So maybe like in 2 weeks, I'll give you the rundown on the final exam in terms of the content and all that. Is that okay?
Yes. Yes, Prof.
Okay. Well, like I said last time, I think Mr. Nazrul asked the same question. It's going to be in all essay format. So it'll be like, you know, I'll give you like 5 questions and you choose 3 or 5 or 3 or 4 or something like that. Okay. And you have to elaborate. It's open book, it's open, whatever. Nowadays it's open internet, open web, open source. It's an open source exam. So you can use any source you like. Okay. And it'll be 2 hours. And so they're not, you know, it's not like textbook questions. They're questions that you need to sort of think about and synthesize and give opinions.
Prof, only 2 hours, Prof. Not 1 day.
No, that's standardized. The faculty, all final exams are only 2 hours. Why, Razia, you want it to be longer?
Like
You
last
prefer a
sem,
really
1
long
day.
exam? Huh? No, 2 hours is enough. I don't want to keep you longer than 2 hours. That's enough.
So we don't need reference, right?
Usually I don't require references, but if you provide references, of course, it's always good. If you want to, you know, make specific references to any textual sources, it's good to provide the references. But no, in a final exam, I wouldn't expect you to, only because, you know, it's just not enough time to really be worrying about references. But if you have the time and you want to include references, you know, usually it's, if you want to quote something, or, you know, you present. But for the most part, no, I don't expect you to use references.
Prof, about the assignment 5, it's about coding. So we have to do the table of coding, or we just do the essay one, like Prof do the exercise last week?
You should come up with a code book, a full code book. So like it's going to look like the example that I provided, but with the addition of the actual data. So last week, sorry, just want to take us back to where we left off last week. Hold on. So last week we ended up with this. Okay, so this is where you see, can you see my word screen? Yeah.
Yes.
So it's going to look like this, essentially. The only difference is that you're going to have, well, it's not going to look quite like this, but you'll have, this will be a category, and then these will be your codes, right? And then you'll have the data like this. Okay, so it'll be similar to this, but you'll have this will be a category with a definition. Okay. And underneath that will be the codes. Okay, so today, hopefully by today, by the end of today's practice session, we will have developed our categories for the first research question. Okay, so you'll get a better idea, I think, by the end of class today of what it's going to look like. All right, but if you look at the example I gave in Pucha Blast, that's essentially what it's going to look like. Of course, just a much longer version, obviously. All right, and so you'll have separate categories and codes for each research question. So there's three, as I mentioned, there's 3 sub questions you're going to answer. So those 3 questions, each one gets their own set of categories and codes. All right. And the other thing is that, as you can see here, like we don't have too many repeat codes yet, but like this one here, family, we've already got both respondents from our transcripts last week. Michelle and Mary Catherine have both mentioned family in reference to this first research question. So this family code contains the data from both participants. So don't separate out your codes according to the study participant. Okay, the data gets what's the word? The data gets grouped according to the code, all right? And then above the code is the category. Okay, so not according to participant. Some students in the past, they've made that mistake where they have codes for Michelle and then codes for Mary Catherine. And no, the data doesn't get grouped according to respondent. It gets grouped according to theme, according to code, category, and theme. Okay, so that's important to realize. Now, if you're doing a real study with multiple types of data, you're going to have not only interview transcript data here, you may have field notes under here, you may have excerpts from documents, observational notes, all under the same codes, right? So if you're doing triangulation, for example, all the data gets, again, it gets analyzed together. There's not separate codes for observations and separate codes for documents and separate codes for interviews, right? That's what it means to derive patterns from data. It means whatever type of data you're using, you're deriving the same findings. And that's the power in triangulation. That shows that you're on the right track in terms of your findings. That all these different data sources are pointing to the same findings. Right? That's really the essence of triangulation.
Can I ask a question about analysis? Because I actually tried working on the assignment already. Like for example, you've shown there like family, the code for family.
Yeah.
For example, Michelle says that yes, because of her parents' influence, and that's why she chose the college. But for Mega, another transcript that somebody says that no, parents actually didn't influence her in the choice of the transcript. So is that considered a negative case analysis? And do I code it as family, even though she said no? She specifically mentioned there that, you know, my parents were not the reason I chose this course, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
No, you would not code that, because the research question is what made them choose. So obviously in her case, family was not a reason why she chose. So you would not code Mega under family in that situation.
So that one is not considered a negative case analysis, because I thought that if let's say we say family, we will be getting codes that support family, and also if there's someone who specifically mentioned that family was not the reason.
Well, you could. I mean, you could use it as negative, but the idea there is to really understand. I mean, it's a kind of a simplistic example, because I mean, in your sample, you're not going to have your entire sample agreeing on the reasons why they, you know what I mean, why they attended. So that wouldn't make her necessarily a negative case, unless you're trying to understand why family did not influence her. Like, was there another reason? I think if you're trying to explain the reason why family is not the reason why she chose, maybe, but you wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't code that under family, because for her, family was not a reason why she chose that university. Right. Like here, like for example, family in this case, yeah, even within family, there's different ways that family influenced the girl. So for example, Mary Catherine said she had an aunt that went there. Now that's not a direct influence. That's what we would call, like in the US, we call that a legacy. Like if you have a family member that went to a university and you went there, they call it a legacy. In other words, like even some universities, they give you breaks in your tuition, in your fees, because you had, your parents went there or something. Right. So, and that sometimes can help you get into a college, university. Right. So we call it legacy. So in Mary Catherine's case, it was an indirect reason. right? It was an indirect influence. The aunt, she doesn't say that, oh, my aunt, told me that I should go there because she went there and she talked so great about it. She just said, my aunt went there, that's it. Right? And then Michelle's is, of course, very unique. Her situation with her parents, and she explains how that is, right? Now, in Mega's case, and she says parents didn't influence me. Well, what did her parents, tell her about, university, right? What was her parents' role in helping her or not helping her choose for university? So I think you could use it.
Didn't really elaborate much because it just mentioned that no, my parents were not.
No, I know in the transcript. I know in the transcript she doesn't elaborate. But I'm saying if this was a real study, it may help. You know what I mean? You might use Mega's situation not necessarily as a support for family, but to understand the different ways family can influence girls' choices. You know what I mean? To get more insight into the family code, or the family as a reason. So I think in that case you could use it as a negative case, but not necessarily as support for family, helping her decide or being one of the reasons why she chose that university. Okay, so again, I mean, these are very very simple transcripts, straightforward, just for the sake of exercise. But those things always raise questions. That's the way when you do qualitative research, it's, analysis is it's going to raise a lot of questions as you go through it. You know what I mean? And if you're not asking questions of your data, you're probably not doing something right. Like if you see everything so crystal clear, so black and white, there's something that's not right. It should be a bit, it should be, you should scratch your head and go, wow, what does that mean? Or wonder why that is, or, why did she say that? Or, is there another reason behind that? Which, all these questions are going to come up. And that's part of the process. And that's what adds to the depth and the insight. Okay, so these are good questions to ask. As you're gonna, this is the whole point of practicing, is to get a feel for it. Kind of questions you're gonna come up with. All right. So being comfortable with discomfort is part of doing qualitative research. Qualitative researcher has to learn to be comfortable with discomfort. Okay, you have to be comfortable with the fact that you're going to be unsure at times. Okay, if you're not, then it's going to make life really hard. But that takes getting used to. The data is not going to jump out at you and tell you how to code it. Code me under family. Code me. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to interact with it. You got to engage with it.
The other thing that I realized when I was going through was that there were some sections that seemed to be part of the semi-structured topic guide, because they were asking the same things like, what kind of activities did you do? What do you expect from the class? I start to see that. That one is not so much of an issue. The other thing is, like you said, some of the codes, some of the things they mentioned could be an indirect influence. So initially, when I read through the first part talking about, my interests are in humanities, my interest is in science, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really go straight to choice of college or course or whatsoever. But then I kind of feel like, I have to code it somewhere first, because I think later on it may be related to the choice of classes, because that's probably theoretically, I feel that it might be related. So yeah, that's another discomfort that I face.
Yes, and but that's why I'm using real transcripts, because I really want you to see that this is what happens in qualitative studies, is that you often get data where you're not sure whether it speaks directly to the research question or not. And so what do you do? Right. And so there's no simple answer to that question. It is a matter of choice in a lot of time, in a lot of situations. And like you said, it may depend on what kind of theory you're using. And sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's best just to be on the safe side initially and code it. And then, you find out later, as the finding starts to take shape and emerge more clearly, you may find that those initial codes are not really relevant, So if it's okay for this particular exercise, if you see something in the data that you think's relevant and you can make the connection, go ahead, code it. There's no real right or wrong. It's just a matter of how you coalesce those codes around whatever category you're developing. And so even if you want to make a comment and say, write a little memo there and say, I coded this under this category because, and then you explain it. That's good for you to practice memoing, to practice making those connections and documenting them in the form of memos. So it's good practice for you. And then I'll also, it's also good for me to see how you're thinking about it. All right. So it's really up to you. I don't, there's, if you see it that way, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Prof, one question. Okay, Prof.
Yes. Yes.
So we will do this assignment for the we can choose either 3 transcript that you given, full transcript.
Okay, so no, the transcripts for the assignment are in Putra Blast. Okay.
Yeah.
Under the assignments folder. Yeah. Yeah. So if you go to the assignments folder.
Most.
Yeah. The most. Yeah. Okay. So assignment 5 here. These.
Yeah.
These. Okay. There's 3 transcripts here. So these are the 3 transcripts you use for your assignment.
So we have to translate the code for 3 this transcript.
Yes, what we're doing in class, using the 3 transcripts, doing the coding, according to the same research questions, you do the same thing with these 3 transcripts. Develop your code book. Okay, all the instructions are here, and you're going to develop your code book, okay, according to the example. All right. Okay, sure. So that's why I'm trying to use the same study, even though it's different transcripts. Well, Michelle's the same, actually. The transcripts are somewhat different, but I'm using the same study in the class so that at least you're familiar with the study, you're familiar with the research questions, you know what to look for. Now you just have to, for the assignment, you just have to go and do it and expand it. Okay, so I was afraid if I did a totally different data set, it would be really confusing. So I've done this now several semesters, and the students usually come up with really nice code books. So I'm not worried. I'm sure you guys will do fine.
Professor.
Excuse me. Yes. Augustine, yeah. Augustine, I can't hear you. I think the connection is bad. Oh, okay. So in the chat, you asked, where is the example? The example is here in the assignments folder. Okay. It says the example codebook can be viewed here.
Okay. Okay, Professor. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Are our presenters ready? I didn't realize how late it was. Presenters for tonight, are you ready to go?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. Oh, Razia, you're starting us off? Oh, Maizura.
Maizura start first.
Okay. All right. So tonight's class, we continue with analysis, but we move towards writing and presentation of our analysis and our findings. Okay, so this is, I think, another, I think it's another useful article, and it's really written for students. So I think it's quite easy reading as well. So, okay.
Okay, can I start, Prof?
Yes, you may. Go ahead.
Okay, can you see my screen? Rajak, would you be able to see the screen?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, Prof. Latif and all my fellow friends. Today, we, Razia, Song, and myself will be presenting an article titled Methodology Analysis, Qualitative Data, and Writing Up Your Findings by Anne Ryan. Okay. All right, now what this article addressed, this article basically looking at the strategy in analyzing qualitative data and writing findings. So basically, it looks into why one should analyze data and not assume that it can speak for itself, what analyzed entails, getting started, the nature of evidence, doing more advanced analysis, writing up your findings and a discussion oriented writing. Before we start, the writer start the article with two questions. Why not just present verbatim the data that you collect or source, or why not let the data speak for themselves under why analyze data? So the simple answer is the data would not speak for itself in a form of which it was collected. So it means that the recording, the page of transcript, documents, or other kind, one kind or another, because these raw data do not constitute the findings of the research, because findings refer to what has emerged from the data after the process of analysis. All right, and the author have given an example for us to consider. It's an interview data from research on battered 93 women by Margaret Hayden. I think this is a research on male violence and women resistance. So now this example shows how the researcher handled the text transcript in order to reveal the meaning embedded within it. So in this article, we have Christine, a 40-year-old woman no longer living with a husband and doing her 6th interview with the author. So if you can see here, I have snipped some part of the article. All right, so we can see here in this narration, she here denotes Christine's former husband. She positioned him as a powerful acting agent, issuing orders and demanding obedience. If you can see, number 69, he almost, number 70, he decided, and number 75, he decided, referring to Christine's former husband, whereby in this narration, Christine denotes herself by I and you. So if you look at number 68, I have never, number 71, I'm not used, right? And 72, you have, this one she used you, 73, you can, and 74, you won't, right? So the researcher, right, mentioned that the tension and dialogical interplay in the use of switching between the pronouns I and you. So she interprets the man is a dominant force, but he only rules the you, not the I. So with the interplay between these pronouns, create a narrative space for the resident self. So such variation in pronouns use contribute to a positioning of herself as one that person, then then a person resisting domination, although she concealed her position stance. This is what mentioned by the researcher. All right, my next slide.
Wait. Can you go back, Mizura?
Okay.
So this is a perfect example. Thank you for putting that excerpt of the example in the slide. I think it's really helpful because the articles, they often do that, and I think they're useful. So it's good that the students can see that. But okay, so if you look at that data that she's using there, or the author is showing there, now if you just look at that data, right? Now I just want to bring in the element of theoretical framework, okay, in terms of qualitative research. So if you were just to look at that data, if you did not have a theoretical framework, how would you analyze that data? You could analyze that data in so many different ways, right? It's just a series of very short expressions, right? And so this is a perfect example of the role of theoretical framework in qualitative research. Now, the author is, as it says in the article, she's looking at this data from the lens, from the theoretical viewpoint of something related to critical theory or domination, resisting domination, feminist theory of some kind, okay? And looking at the way Christine, the woman, the way she's actually speaking and the way she presents herself, the way she projects herself in the discussion, okay? Now that's because the author is coming from a specific type of theoretical framework that emphasizes on the woman's role juxtaposed to the man, and the man is the dominant force and so forth, okay? But without a theoretical framework, without a clear theoretical framework, just looking at that data, you could look at that data in so many different ways, right? And so this is a really good example of why, why theoretical framework is so important for analyzing data. Okay. So the idea that you can look at data as a blank slate, well, yes and no. I think there's truth to that, but I think at the same time, it really helps to have a clear theoretical framework. And this is a really good example because it's very simple. The data is very simplistic, right? But there's actually a lot of meaning in there, and they go into the meaning based on just the language that's being used, right? So it's almost like a linguistic kind of study as well. Anyway, Joe, I just wanted to point that out. So, okay, Maizura, continue, please.
All right. Okay. All right. So from that example, we can see basically findings could only emerge after data being analyzed. So it's here, it says that analyze takes us beyond the raw data, the next strategy. Yeah. So raw data is suitable for an archive, but not for presentation in a thesis for a limited number of words. So we, as a researcher, you need to arrange the data, different teams under different teams or headings, and to select and present certain pieces to readers. Now, this process is often daunting. Yeah, it's difficult, takes time, especially page of interview or focus group transcripts or other documents to work with. Now, a great deal of this process of analysis remains invisible in the final thesis document, although all the process inform the final product. All right, the next point is on analysis provide evidence. Now, analysis is necessary because findings require evidence. Evidence is something that is able to convince us of the existence of certain kind of knowledge or certain kind of phenomenon. Yeah, the evidence should be clear, right? It should let your reader see how you have fitted your explanation together. All right. The quotes bring back to the individual or collective and real experience of the research participants or document writer. So it means that their words, yeah, provide the evidence and the analysis frames in the experience. Now, in some cases, what if, yeah, the researcher are not allowed to use quote as part of the finished thesis, right? Now, this may be because the respondent asks for their actual words to be kept confidential. So if this happened, all right, the researcher need to keep the evidence in a separate file of her own. Means that they still need to go to to keep the analysis process as an evidence. Right. So next slide.
So that's true. There are theses, there are situations in studies where you will not be allowed to show your data. You will not be allowed to display your data because the participants have asked you not to. Okay, so does that mean that you can't do the study? No, you can still do the study. Of course, there's a certain limitation that comes with that, but you can still do the study. But it requires a lot of really good, very rigorous paraphrasing on your part. And you may have to provide other types of evidence.
Right, now an analysis make the familiar strange, right? Means that we see things without bias. The analysis have the task of using varieties of ways of seeing and thus revealing a certain essence of the data, one that keep to address the research question. The reader needs some pass through all this data, which will provide, for example, a psychological, sociological, pedagogical, social change, or cultural interpretation. All right.
Yeah, this is a really important quote here, statement. Analysis makes the familiar strange. In other words, your job is not to present what's obvious. You know, as a qualitative researcher, you're trying to show what the reader doesn't see. You know, what's the underlying essence of what's happening here. Don't just tell us what's happening on the surface. We know what's happening on the surface. We see it every day. But what's really happening underneath the surface? That's your job, to make what seems to be familiar actually actually strange, because it's not evident, it's not readily evident. You have to really analyze the data and dig through the data to really understand what's going on. Okay, so that's your job.
Prof, you're muted, Prof.
Yeah.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi for some reason just died for a second or two.
Okay. I thought it's mine.
I don't know what to, okay, sorry.
Can I proceed, Prof?
Yes, please go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Then the next point in this article, right, highlighted on the analysis shed lights on a research question. So we highlighted this one quotation from Walcott 1990, whereby he said that the research question are paramount and the insight should relate to them. Keep in mind what you have set out to do. Yeah. So the research question here draw us back constantly to the purpose of the research and the focus of the analysis. The analysis has to make links between what you have found in your data and the question that lead you to undertake the research in the first place. So the insight or understanding that you present should throw some light on your thesis question. So analysis may even reveal that you asked the wrong question to begin with. So what you should do is to continue to develop, to refine, even change your research question as the analysis proceeds. So one interesting quote that I've got from this article, whereby it says that allow your data to take you wherever it needs to go.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. So what does analysis entail? All right, analysis is the process of coming up with the findings from your data. So the complete process of analysis requires data to be organized, scrutinized, selected, described, theorized, interpreted, discussed, and presented to a readership. So it means here, now all the data is filtered through the researcher, and the researcher will decide what to use, how to use it. They will draw on your theoretical sensitivity. They decipher the complexity, interpret of the experiences represented in the text that the researcher are working with, and researcher need to look for evidence of how people make senses of their experience. Of all these things, researcher will provide new and insightful lenses for viewing what respondents tell or what is written in documents.
So this is a very nice diagram, actually, Maizura, that really illustrates what it means. The idea of researcher as instrument really means. Okay. Have you heard of has anyone in the class heard of the term before this of theoretical sensitivity?
By that, I did a research on this, meaning it says that data analysis, whereby the referring to the personal quality of the researcher itself, means that researcher is the one who decide on the data analysis and gathering. I don't know, Prof.
Yeah, so yeah, that's partially it. So I think like in the article, they give a nice definition, which is, I think really captures it. It's theoretical sensitivity is your, it's actually a combination of your, not only your reading of the literature, your familiarity with the theory you're using and the issues related to the theory, but also your personal and professional experience. It's this combination of all of them together, which allows you to be sensitive to certain theoretical aspects that might arise from the study. Okay, so that way, when you're reading your data, if you have a high level of theoretical sensitivity, you can easily relate the data itself to those different theoretical concepts based on that grasp of the theory. So that's theoretical sensitivity. Okay, so but it's not only based on literature and understanding of theory. There's also a personal element to it, right? It's like the idea of having a lecturer in your class, teaching a class who's never actually worked in the area that they're teaching, right? They're teaching from a textbook perspective, but they can't really relate that textbook knowledge to the real world, for example, because they've never actually done it. Right? So theoretical sensitivity is this combination of these experiences. Okay. So that's a really nice diagram.
Okay, and then the highlight things that mentioned by the writer is to start early. So when he says that very often the student researcher, right, devote a great time to collect data, but we do not have enough time in analyzing it, and this leaves a weakness in the thesis. So he says that these two processes, the collecting and analyzing data, need to be in balance.
Yeah.
All right. And she quoted that need to allow at least 3 times as much of analysis for data collection, means that more time needed for analysis. The author also pointed about to think about analysis before even start collecting the data. So it means that here is question and issues to do with analysis should be occupying the mind of the time researcher or we begin formulating the research question.
It's a very good, very important point. I have that highlighted in my article. The amount of time needed to do analysis analysis is one of the most time-consuming parts of your study. You know, you need to spend a lot of time with your data. So it's important.
Okay, now another point that given by the author to see how other researchers do it, right? So like reading articles, books of other theses, so that you're gain some insight into the ways other researchers go for it. All right, do not confine yourself to read research directly concerned with your topic. An analytic strategy that works for different topics could work equally well for yours or could be adopted to suit your topic. The author also point out that you need to scan research journals and report with analysis in mind rather than topic. And you may find some useful examples on how others go about analysis and means by which they write up their findings. And the last one, he says that be alert to processes and procedure that might be useful for our own work.
Yep. Examples.
All right.
Examples. Yep. Lots of examples.
Sorry, Prof.
No, I was just saying, make use of lots of examples as well.
Oh,
right. So,
okay.
And it's like it says there, even examples outside of your field. Right. So yes, of course, you want to look at examples within your field, but even to go outside to get ideas is really important as well. Okay. So.
All right. So that's all for my part, and then I'll pass to my team, Razia, to continue with the other point.
Thank you,
Razia,
Muzra.
the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mai. Thank you, Prof. Okay, I will start my part. Okay, this is second part of the articles. I start with page 97 to 103. It's about data analysis. So once we collect our data such as document analysis, interview transcript, and report observation, and so on, we should do the analysis as soon as data is collected. So we cannot allow data to accumulate without preliminary analysis. What is preliminary analysis? So we start collecting the data, we start beginning to analyze in mind and ask ourselves what is the data, what is already about the data we suspect, and then what is surprising about the data. And then we do the writer notes. Okay, there is 4 steps of writer notes. The first one is index and organize data from the start. The second one is generate categories. The third one is think, reflect, and immerse in our data. And the last one is systematic, organize, preserving, and keep a record. This I will explain the next slide.
Okay, sorry, can you stop there, Razi? I just want to ask the class a question. So last week when we were doing our practice coding, I think I mentioned what's the very first thing you do when you get your transcript? After you've transcribed the data, do you remember what I said last week? What's the very first thing you do?
Read the data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's part of preliminary analysis, is reading, just reading through the data.
Just reading, yes.
And
line by line.
Yeah, getting very familiar with the data. That's actually, it's part of analysis, but it's considered preliminary analysis. So in this article, the way she, or I think it's a she, right? The author, she goes about, the way she goes about explaining analysis is she starts differently than the way we're doing it. She talks about developing large sort of generic categories to start with, okay, which may be a little bit confusing as compared to the way we're doing it. Neither one is right or wrong. Neither one is wrong. Sorry, neither one is wrong. And again, there are different ways of doing it. But what some analysts will do is that they prefer, rather than to start by developing very specific codes, they like to first get a feel for the sort of general narrative of the interview by developing sort of big themes first. So generally speaking, we can say that in this interview, she really talks about 5 main things, right? And so from there, then they start to break down those large themes into smaller categories, codes, whatever, okay? So that's another way you can do it. You can analyze your data that way. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? Again, it's more of a personal preference than anything. All
So
right.
we can focus the main theme also, right?
Yeah, you can start off by just sort of generically identifying some main themes, and then from there trying to, break those themes down into more specific categories and then codes and whatnot. So that is a perfectly acceptable way of doing it. Okay, so that's why I just want to make that clear. There's, in qualitative analysis, you'll never find that there's one way of doing it. It's really a lot of it is preference, a lot of it is, whatever tradition you're using and the way that it's done typically in that tradition. There are some people that just think conceptually, right? They when they look at data, they just think concepts. So that's fine. If that's your strength, then make use of that strength. Use that strength to your advantage. Okay. So just be clear. All right.
Okay.
So let's see how she does it.
Next, Mai. Okay. So how this is the process, how to organize our data according to the theme. The first thing that we have to do is coding. What's the meaning of coding? Coding is reading our data and developing a set of categories, theme or basic organizing ideas. And then after we done the coding, we do give name to this category. We call categories or labeling and use them to label section of data. Some categories are in our mind before research begins. So drawn from the theoretical orientation and the kinds of question the research is addressing. Sometimes these categories simply relate to the question we ask. And then after that, we identify the broadest category. So read the broad theme, several may arise from one piece of text, either anticipated or unanticipated. So keep it as simple as possible. List topic and subtopic and divide your transcript or document into section based on this topical heading.
Right.
So the next step is record. If you find you are having idea about the theory or something else at this stage, just make a note and record them in writing, but keep them separate for now. Okay, and then we can use computer package for this coding, but we are it's good. It's better if we do the manually, because when we do the manual, we know the flow of the process of the coding. So especially for the student teacher.
So here, recording can also be referred to as memoing. Okay, so again, this is the jargon that you have to be aware of in qualitative research. So when she says record there, what she's also talking about is the same thing as memoing. Okay, and essentially that's just writing as you go. Okay, keeping everything documented. And then identify the broadest categories. Keep it as simple as possible. List topics and subtopics and divide your transcripts or documents into sections based on topical headings. That's also a form of what's called structural coding. Okay, so I mentioned last week, you can divide your document, your transcript according to the research questions, or maybe even according to topic that's being discussed. Those are all forms of structural coding. Okay, so again, they're describing the same basic process, but they're using different language. Okay, so it's important to understand the concepts, not necessarily the specific terms that are used. All right, that's what's really more important. Okay.
Okay, next. Okay, so this is a question about the theme. So like Prof said, we have to ask the question about our data. So this is example of the question. What can you tell about the people, person, object in your data? Yeah. And then we ask our data that what is going on, and then what can you read between the line and what is the basis for your reading? What tentative conclusion are you coming to? What categories are coming from you? What categories are new in the sense that they are emerging from the fact of the data? What tentative conclusion are influenced by the value, attitude, or meaning of the person or people who produce the data? What make you focus on some particular of the data and not on others? I think this is the process to understand in depth what is the meaning of our theme.
Yeah, so
then,
this is the heart of analysis, is asking questions like this. So last week when we were doing our coding together, some of you, when I asked for codes, some of you came up with codes that were not necessarily immediately reflected in the data itself. You know, so it's really important that we begin this habit when we do our analysis of like question number 3, what can you read between the lines and what is the basis for your reading? So when you decide to give some text in the transcript a code, you need to then immediately ask yourself, what is the evidence that I'm basing this on? What text, what actual words am I basing this code on, right? And how do I make the connection between the text and the code that I'm giving it, okay? Yeah. So that's really important. That's a really important part of reflexivity in qualitative analysis, is you're constantly, even questioning your own decisions, right?
Yeah, reflect our data also.
Yep. Okay, so these kind of questions, and this is a good example of a list of questions, you know, always have these kind of questions in mind as you're going through it. Okay. Next, so we should be our hardest critic. We should be our own hardest critic, in other words.
Okay, next is keeping a thesis at the thematic level of analysis. So a good write-up and discussion thematic analysis can produce a very satisfactory thesis. Walcott said, suggest thinking of description as subtle analysis and the more overly analytically interpretive section as heavy-handed, even intrusive analysis. So evaluation report usually confine themselves to this level of analysis of the primary or raw data. Find some example if possible. However, try to move beyond thematic analysis. Indeed, it is essential to do so at the master and PhD level. So we have to analyze beyond the analysis. Okay, doing more detailed analysis. This one, I think we have to focus the second layer of the analysis, the more detail on the analysis. Once a category is described, more detailed analysis usually try to identify and reflect on concepts that underpin the categories. All the way that people understand the word are filtered through system of meaning making.
Yeah. That's, okay. At the end of the day, that's what we're going for, is meaning making.
Okay, so this is writing up in the form of note, memo, and mind map is part of early stages of analysis, where you show similarity or difference between finding and the ponder of their theoretical significance. It is essentially theorizing about the data, which involve the taxing business of trying to grasp what is actually going on. So guiding question for writing up data. Within a post-positivist epistemological stance, it is of course accepted that it's important to fully know what is going on. One can illuminate what is happening, but always bear in mind that if you think you understand perfectly, you probably misunderstand completely.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a great quote. That's a great quote.
Your ultimate aim is to take the kind of knowledge that are implicit in the data and to translate them into readable prose.
So that, you know, I think I mentioned this already earlier in the class, but the importance of writing as you go, writing up notes, writing memos, diagramming, okay? So mind mapping, you know, if you really think you have connections, you've made connections between things in your data, do a diagram, do a mind map, and try to really develop those connections using mind maps. One of the nice things about NVivo is it has a nice function on mapping. You can do different types of maps in NVivo. You can both use it creatively, like just sort of freehand, or you can also include elements from your project. We'll show those next week, inshallah. But they're really helpful. They're really helpful. They help you to really see the connections. Okay, because sometimes we think in our heads we've made connections, but then we actually go to write it out, we find that it's actually not as clear as we thought. So it's an important part of the process.
So the NVivo will keep the connection between the data. No, we have to do the connection. I think the NVivo
researcher as instrument. Researcher as instrument.
Okay,
NVivo just provides us with tools to facilitate. Yeah, no, seriously, it just provides us with tools to facilitate the process, but the analysis is all from us. It's all from us.
I auto-generate, bro. Okay, next.
Yeah.
I
mean, they have different search engines, but
yeah, got it.
You can do queries of the data. Like you can ask NVivo to identify like certain similar phrases and stuff, but NVivo can't make meaning of that data. It can only identify, you know, similarities in the data. That's all I can do.
Okay. So make your process of analysis clear for the reader. So the goal is to present analysis, discussion, and conclusion in such a way that the reader is able to assess the researcher's interpretation. So think about the writing up process like telling a storytelling lah, like Prof said.
Yeah.
Okay, you cannot present every single finding that has result from your analysis. How you link them and how you make them speak to your audience is a key task for you as analyst and writer. Okay. So
Telling a story.
This one for
people get kind of shocked when I talk about that. Like I do a lot of courses on journal article writing and stuff. And when you tell them that, think of it as a story, like telling a story, people go, huh? How do you turn a research study into a story?
Like
but
novel.
a good research study will have a very clear storyline. It really will. A main, sort of a main storyline that you're working with. And so if you can do that, it makes a much more effective report, whether it's a thesis or an article, doesn't matter. Okay, so think of it as storytelling.
Okay. So, all right, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Azia.
Yeah.
Sorry you can't be at Starbucks.
No, at home, Prof. Thank you.
All right. Razia, I will stop sharing, yeah?
Yes.
I think.
Thank you, Mai.
We shall wait for the second
Kevin. Kevin.
All right.
Shall we continue, Professor?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. Share my this article. Can you hear me clear? Proof.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
We can't hear you, Zinke. I think there's a
Can you hear me? Okay, I'll try again.
Okay, now I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, maybe about the connection.
Oh, you're cutting out again.
What?
You're cutting out again. Can I hear you? Is it is it the connection or is it your?
Okay. Then I will turn off. I will try to turn off my video. Try again, okay?
Go ahead.
This is about, I think it is about our we have more data than we can.
Connection. Yeah, we can't hear you, Zinke.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's the connection or if it's your equipment or.
Okay, I'll try.
Because now it's okay. Now I can hear you, but then it cuts out. And maybe just present, and we'll just go through the slides. We can see the slides, so that's enough. So just do your best. Just go ahead and present. Do your best. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Rather than exhaustive theory of the original research question, theoretical interests selection of a particular get
Okay, yeah.
accounts.
Should we share for him?
No, I don't think
Hello,
it's
we can hear you. Maybe it is the problem of your equipment. I suggest you putting off your hand mic.
Put off my head. Okay. Okay.
yeah, good idea.
Is it okay? Is it okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Much
Okay.
better.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay,
Thanks,
okay.
Phil.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's try it again.
Okay.
Oh, it's not there.
People
It's
of a
not.
situation or event. Any kind the person producing the content is lacking accounts of different
Well, it's not the slides. I mean, he's sharing the slides. That's why we can see the slides, right, Afika? So we'll let's just read the slides and then let him present, even though we can't really make out what he's saying. We can at least read the slides, and I'll try and comment on the slides as well.
Okay,
Okay.
can you hear me?
It's like when you want to just talk to us regularly, we can hear you, but as soon as you start presenting, your voice disappears. I don't know why.
Okay.
Or should I help you to share, Kevin?
Thanks. No thanks. I'll try to.
All right.
It's okay. Just go through it, and I'll comment on the slides as well. Okay, because
Okay.
I want us to finish up before the break, actually.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, so here they're talking a lot. They're talking about how you need to be selective in choosing the data you display in your reporting. Okay, so you're not going to be focusing on presenting, as it says there, accounts of specific individuals. You want to present an account of your phenomenon, the phenomenon itself. Okay, and you want to make sure that you're, as it says, they're drawing generalized conclusions rather than speaking of the experiences of specific individuals. Unless, of course, you're doing something like narrative analysis or you're doing a biographical study. In that case, obviously, you're going to be focusing on the experiences of individuals. All right. Okay, next slide. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Next slide.
Yeah.
Can you hear me this time?
Now your slide is not changing. Yeah, I think I think it's your internet connection, actually. So choosing what data to present is a very important decision in qualitative reporting, okay, in your writing, right? Because as it says in that first section there, getting rid of data, there's a lot of data you're not going to be including in your report. So you need to be very selective in terms of what data you choose to write up and include as evidence in your finding. All right, and so I mentioned as you're going through your analysis, you want to highlight and identify data excerpts from the transcripts that point to specific themes very clearly. And those are the ones you want to use in your reporting. All right. Okay, so.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but I don't think I'm going to be able to hear you in a minute. Go ahead.
analysis in post-positive research framework of analysis, which includes attention to construct knowledge and practices and different institutions, different situations they are referring to, identifying patterns of consistency or variations, both within the accounts and across the accounts.
So that last bullet is very important. That last bullet is that in your findings, you're going to talk about themes which reflect patterns, but you're also going to include or mention where there are varying accounts. So for example, if there is a specific small subgroup or an individual in your finding that speaks in a way that's totally different than the rest of the group, right? So, and this is kind of like what Chiang was talking about before in relation to family. You may want to highlight that actually. Okay, it's the idea that in qualitative research, we don't remove the outlier from our study like they do in quantitative studies. We actually want to highlight the outlier and elaborate on why the outlier may see the issue differently. How does their perspective of the issue differ from the majority or the group that saw it a different way, right? And that might help us and enrich our understanding of that particular finding. Okay.
Okay. And analysis, data analysis and interpretation. The following first one, who, for example, the interest of sex, race, class, who is, and field in which a discount conditions facilitate particular discount. What is
okay.
Discussion oriented right time. Yeah, to develop right time, we need to some upon the findings, the implications to your research questions. And second, integrate findings use to say compared to Scratch and Walk 1995, page 125. And third one, the implication not
Okay, so here they're talking about writing up the discussion. Okay, so a lot of students, in fact, today I had another thesis I was reviewing, a very nice study in a lot of ways, but the discussion, the student really had nothing to say, which is really hard to believe after 4 years and 250 pages, they have nothing to discuss. Clearly, they just don't know how to write a discussion, okay? And so you can see there are some of the main, they give 3 main ideas here related to discussion, okay? But discussions, actually, you need to really go back and think, and you need to really do, in a lot of cases, you need to do a secondary literature review, right? Because you've done the study, you've found things, and those things may or may not agree with the literature that you reviewed in your chapter 2. Okay, so you have to explain, well, why are there differences in the findings as compared to the literature review done initially? How does it implicate on the theory that I'm using? Implications on theory. How does it implicate on practice, on policy, et cetera, et cetera? So all these things have to be considered in the discussion section, and it's a very, very important part of the study. Okay, if you can't discuss, you can't really say that you've contributed anything really in terms of knowledge, because there's no evidence that you've done that. That's where you make the case that this study contributes to the body of knowledge. It's in the discussion.
Okay, I will go. And the use we need to give some kind of introduction about our purpose in this. For example, we can chapter the purpose of this to be focused. Is about over and don't be critical friend, reader, or supervisor. Then maybe that.
We can hear you.
It's okay, Junji. Let him just continue, because we'll just read his slides and then I'll.
Okay.
Yeah, Song, they're telling you to take off your headphones and to do it without the headphones. Maybe that's the problem.
Yes, I'm trying to tell him about this.
Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll try to. Okay.
Nice.
Conclusions. And first, will be framed in they fit into websites or help to initiate debate about issues and questions. That's drawing attention to equally important is examining where the theory each other or complement each other.
It's not the headphones. Clearly, it's not the
headphones. Written. Sorry.
It's okay.
When I take off my headphone, and I cannot.
Can I have you,
sorry.
Song?
It's okay. It's
I
okay.
read
He's
for you?
almost done. He's almost done. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
And
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. First one is be responsible. You're right, and draw attention to the for your conclusions. And fifth, being dogmatic.
Okay. Can anybody tell me, in terms of the write-up, that's a very interesting statement. Do not come to conclusions too soon, but don't avoid conclusions either. What do you think? What do you think the author is talking about there, in terms of writing up?
Start analyzing early and draw conclusions.
Well,
can you hear me?
I heard part of what you said.
Okay.
So sometimes we get people that like to, well, there's two ways of looking at this. Sometimes in write-ups, students will make their conclusions they extend beyond what the findings actually show. Okay, so you have to be very careful that when you conclude your study, that you're not reaching conclusions that the findings don't really, they don't go to that extent. All right, so make sure that your conclusions are in line with the scope of the study and the findings. All right, and then don't reach conclusions too soon, meaning that as you write, don't sort of like lay out your cards right in the beginning so that the reader has nothing, do you know what I mean? Like build up to the conclusion, right? So it says in the article, keep the tone speculative, open, discursive, and reflexive. Do not come to conclusions too soon, but don't avoid conclusions either. So by the end of the study, we should get the conclusions clearly, but don't lay out the conclusions at the very beginning so that you have really nothing to build up to, right? So again, these are writing techniques, and it has to do with how you structure your writing of your study. Okay, it's a very important part of the process. How you present your findings through your writing is very. You may have beautiful findings, but if you can't articulate them and present them in a way that's going to communicate them clearly and effectively, then you're not going to get those findings across to the reader. All right, so these are all really important. Some of the other, a couple other things that Song just presented that I just want to, there are two, yeah. So in Song, can you go back to the previous slide on purpose and avoid over abstract writing? Those are two very important. important points.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is really helpful. These are very practical comments, suggestions. So it's really helpful if you do this in your writing, in your own writing. Whatever, in every section or subsection that you're writing about, always give an introduction to that section and provide a purpose. So in your drafts, like it says, begin each one with a phrase or some sort of phrase that is mentioned there. Okay, so the purpose of this chapter is to, or the purpose of this section is to, right? That small phrase, if you start off your at least the major sections in the study, in the report, by writing that, it will really help you to focus. Because if you don't know the purpose of that paragraph or of that section, you're going to know once you write that little phrase. Okay. And in an academic work, you have to have a purpose to everything that you write. I mean, literally every sentence has to have a purpose in academic work. Okay. Because it's science, you're reporting science, you're reporting scientific findings. So it's really important to do that. So this will help, it really will help you keep focused. And then that'll make you reflect and see, well, have I really thought this through? Because if you can't answer that question, if you can't write the conclusion to that phrase, that sentence, then you're going to know, and it's going to, wow, okay, wait, I really need to go back and think about this. And then avoid over abstract writing means do not be too abstract. If you're going to write something theoretical or conceptual, make sure that after it, you give specific concrete examples to show that you're really talking about something real. It's not just some theoretical idea, or you're just trying to sound smart, or, that it's real. Okay. And that you yourself know what you're talking about. A lot of people, they write, they use these very conceptual types of they write very conceptual kind of statements or phrases, sentences, and then you can tell from the way that they've written it that it's not really clear what they mean. Okay. So to to solve that problem is to make sure that you provide very concrete examples after you've given the conceptual explanation. Okay, so if you're going to write abstractly, then follow it up with concrete examples. Okay, so that you're clear and the reader is clear what you're talking about. All right. So if you ever see good writing, good academic writing, they always do that. They'll always, they may write a very sort of conceptual phrase or something, and then they'll follow it up and say, for example, right, and then give an example. Okay, so it really helps you understand. So these are very important, very practical techniques to use in your writing. All right.
Yeah.
Are there questions? I hear somebody's trying to ask a question. Song, is that you? We can't hear you.
Yeah, okay. The last one is on writing. The first, based on from an early stage, writing our ideas and ability to theorize about what is going on. We can always add it later, but if you don't start early about the findings, then we cannot find it. We will find it difficult to do it all in one go at the early stage. Writing and revising are forms of thinking. The process of writing for any purpose, whether for social research, fiction, poetry, philosophy, or any other discipline, is a process of thinking. And lastly,
So sorry. We're so sorry. We can't hear you. So don't worry.
Okay.
You've put together very nice.
Sorry.
Oh no, you've put together very nice slides at least, so we can see what you're trying to present. Okay, so.
Okay, I'm very sorry for the.
It's okay. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. This is just the reality we're living in. So don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope you, like Chai Eng said, I hope you can hear us at least.
Okay. I'll try to finish the last point. Writing is provides a record of what you know already.
Can anybody read lips? I can't read his lips.
Cannot hear me? Okay.
Is this your last slide? Is this your last
Yeah.
slide? Okay, okay. All right. Okay. I was gonna say leave the slide up. I was just gonna say a few things.
Okay.
So writing is a really important part of the process. It's not only about reporting. Writing is not only about reporting. It's also about thinking. It's also about analysis. Okay. Qualitative research, writing is analysis. So whenever you think you have an idea about something, oh, I have this new theme, or I see these codes coming together to form a category, try to explain it in writing. If you cannot explain it in writing, then you need to think about it more. Okay. It's as simple as that. Right? Or you need to keep working on it. As you're writing, you're going to be developing your ideas. Okay, so writing is a tool. It really, really is. So don't wait until the very end, in year 4, and you've done all this work, and then you're going to start writing. Start writing from the very beginning. From the very beginning. Okay, after each interview, during your analysis of the interview, write. Okay. Plus, it'll help you as you go. If you're writing as you go, then when it comes time to write up the final report, it'll be easier. All right, because writing really is something that it goes with habit. The more you do it, the better you get at it, and the easier it is. All right. So yeah, so don't worry about Don't worry about the presentation. It's way out of your hands. So don't worry about it.
Okay. Thank
you. Okay, but your slides are very good, very helpful. Your slides.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. So
thank you, Prof. Thank you all.
Any questions from anyone? So very nice job by the presenters tonight. I think you did a very nice, very clear presentation. You captured the article very well. Nice, perfect length. So nice job. Any questions before we break?
No, Prof. No question.
No? Okay. All right. So let's have our break. We'll come back at I guess 8 o'clock. Take a 20-minute break.
Okay, Prof.
All right. See you in a bit.
Okay.
Inshallah. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Are we back? Can we begin?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, Prof.
Okay, I see there's a lot of activity in the chat box. Oh, that was from before. Okay, so let's continue with our analysis work from last week. So we did, in terms of our first research question last week, we did 2 of the 4 transcripts, right? So we did, sorry, that's not it. Where is it? Let's see. So we did Michelle and we did Mary Catherine, and we developed an initial code list, as you can see on the screen. In terms of the question about their choice of college to attend, we identified quality of degree, of the university degree. The religious community or background was a factor. The academically serious or intelligent student body. The fact that the student body is not competitive, or the campus environment is not competitive. The students are modest. There's athletic activities for the students. Family was a factor. Financial support was a factor. Personal preference was a factor. And location was a factor. Okay, so before we go on to the next transcript, and the next transcript we're going to be looking at is a young woman named Haru. Haru, I'm not sure where Haru, I don't know if she's Japanese or what, Japanese American maybe, I'm not sure, but her name is Haru. So if you can, from the downloads from Pucha Blast, the transcripts, if you could pull up the transcript for Haru, I will try to do the same. That's Nicole. There's Haru. Okay, do you guys see Haru on the screen? Can you see that? on my screen?
Yes, Prof.
Yes, Prof.
Okay. So, so like we do with Mary Catherine, I'm not going to read it out loud together. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and read it yourself. Okay, and like we did with Mary Catherine, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and read the transcript and then do the codes on your own, and then we will report out and discuss together. Okay. So remember, oh, there you can see on my screen, there's the dead giveaway. Oh, look at this. This one has my notes in it. Okay, I can't show you the screen. Okay, because it's gonna be like cheating. So anyway, go ahead and first identify the line numbers that deal with this research question 1, and then go ahead and try to code Haru's transcript for research question 1. Okay, any questions? Is that clear?
Professor, I want to, I have a question.
Yes.
How can I understand this coding is not appropriate?
How do you understand the coding is not appropriate?
Yeah.
Well, there has to be clear evidence that the code is, there is some sort of clear indication that the code is related to the data in some way. Okay, Mr. Nazwa. So going back to our discussion on in vivo coding last time, remember we said in vivo coding is typically considered to be the best approach to coding from the perspective of description. In other words, your code accurately describes what's in the data. Okay. Now, if you're doing grounded theorists, they tend to be more conceptual in their coding, right? So, so for your initial coding, again, this is why researchers do things like inter-rater reliability. So, for example, like Nazrul, if you code a certain text of data, then you give it to somebody else to code, and you see how they code it, and then you compare the coding, and then there's either like a negotiation. So you discuss like, okay, why did you code the data this way, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that's one way of checking your coding. All right. But again, the safest way to code, if you're concerned about whether you're coding, like you said, appropriately, there's no real such thing as appropriate, but if you're coding in a way that's that's sort of verifiable, the best way is to do in vivo coding. Okay, so just use the actual words or terms that the participants use to do your codes. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Because I know language sometimes is an issue. And so maybe there are issues with the semantics of language that, you have a hard time picking up on the meaning of what's being said. Like in this particular study, the girls speak a very strong American dialect, their English. So, they use certain phrases that maybe you're not familiar with and stuff like that. So that's always an issue in qualitative research is language, right? So we always come across different issues related to meaning making and language. Okay, so but when in doubt, try to do in vivo coding, and also if you are in doubt, also have your coding checked by a peer, for example, or an inter-rater reliability. You can do inter-rater reliability. That's a very formal way of doing it with statistics and everything, but you can also just do a peer review, peer debriefing, where you give it to another analyst and let them analyze it as well, and then you discuss and negotiate. Okay, so go ahead and code Haru, and then I'll give you a few minutes, and then we'll have a discussion. I'm going to stop sharing in the meantime so I can look at my data.
Professor,
Yes.
can someone say nearness to home or location?
Sorry, Augustine?
Did you hear me? I said, can someone say nearness to home, or will it be better to use location?
Okay, what's the difference between those two?
Like closer to your home, but well, I can say you can use a location. The
Yeah, of
location
course, you
prefer.
can use either one, but what's the difference between them? For example, is closer to home a location?
Yes, it's a location, but it's more
Okay,
specific.
wait. Just answer my question. Is closer to home a location?
Yes.
Is location, does location mean closer to home?
Yeah, location it comprises nearness to home.
Yes, location comprises close to home. Does closer to home comprise location?
Yeah. No.
It doesn't,
No.
right?
Yeah, it
Location
doesn't.
location is the
Just
bigger
specific.
concept.
Yeah, bigger concept. Yeah.
So you can use it, but it for first level coding, it might not it might not capture the nuance of what you're coding. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, if you use a location, it might not capture it,
It's fairly conceptual, so it doesn't necessarily capture the meaning of location or the the specific nuance of what about the location.
So it's better to be specific by saying using nearness to home.
Well, it's not it's not mandatory. Like in the article, she used very broad themes to start with. You can use it again. You can use it, but if you're using an inductive approach, it is helpful to be very to code specifically at first, and then to build up your concepts gradually. Step by step.
Okay.
Yeah, it helps you to capture all the different nuances in the data.
Yes.
Okay, so I think it's a preferred way, especially for novice researchers, so they can sort of see the development of their findings, sort of step by step, gradually, where they're building up their concepts slowly rather than jumping into very conceptual ways of coding.
Okay.
All right, so let's take a look. So this one is Haru is a little bit difficult. She's probably the most difficult to code. I don't know if you guys picked up on that. Did you feel that she was a bit difficult to code?
Yeah.
Yes. Prof.
Yeah. Haru is a very sort of prototypical American teenager. The way she expresses herself, she's sort of she's a little hard to understand.
Beating around the bush, I think.
Yeah,
It's,
well,
not
yeah,
straightforward.
exactly. And the reality is that you get participants like this in qualitative studies. You get people that speak this way, right? So unfortunately, one of the problems is that the analyst, the researcher, didn't do a very good job of probing in this interview. So hold on a second. I actually have, let me just give me 1 second here. I apologize. Let's see. Where is my, I want a blank. All right. Okay, sorry. Let's go back. All right. So, Haru, we'd like to start. Where does the data begin? Let's look at our structural code first. Where does the data begin for this research question 1?
Line 18.
Yeah. Okay, so line 18. Again, asking about the university. Okay, so what made you choose Duke? Okay, so who would like to go first?
Prof, can I try?
Sure.
21 to 23. Starting from so, I thought of 5 colleges until that's the rank, the highest I'll go to. My code will be personal ranking.
Okay, all right, let's do that.
I also code the same, but line 26 to 27.
Okay, let's do this one first. Let me just get this down. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Okay, so you are basing on the fact that she says here, and I had them ranked. Now, she says here, this is a good example of, in this case, Gemma, the researcher, she does do some probing. So when Haru says, so I thought of 5 colleges that sounded interesting and that I'd like to go to, and I had them ranked. Okay, and whichever one I got into that's ranked the highest, I'll go. So now, sounded interesting means what? What does sounded interesting mean?
Does it mean personal interest?
Sorry, Song, I didn't catch you.
No interest.
Well, yeah, see, the word interesting is a very problematic word in English. Sorry?
Maybe very well-known, popular universities.
Okay, so the fact that we don't agree on the meaning of interesting is a problem. Okay, so we don't really know what she means. That's the point. Okay, so Hanizan says it's about, quality, and then Song says it's about interesting, and we don't really know what she means. Okay, and this is going to happen in qualitative studies. They're going to use words that, you might think you know what they mean, but the word interesting is very problematic in English because the word interesting is used to describe many things. It can mean basically anything. Okay, and so from this particular quote, we don't really know what she's talking about yet. She has them ranked, but we don't know what the basis of that ranking is. Okay, and that's why Gemma, in the next line, she says, so tell me a little bit about your ranking system. Because Gemma's confused too. So you rank them according to what's interesting, but what do you mean? Like, what is the ranking based on? Okay, so you have to be very careful. This is where reflexivity comes in. Okay, sounded interesting. Well, what does that really mean? Am I assuming that means X, Y, or Z? Okay, so, and for those of you who are doing your studies in your own languages, your native languages, your first languages, I'm sure you also have words in your first languages, like in Bahasa and Mandarin. You have all these, these words that are, the same issue comes up, right? If people use certain words, they use them different ways and they can mean different things. So be clear, be careful, and be clear that you are sensitive to these terms and that you're not assuming that you know what they mean. Okay, so anyway, we can leave this first code as personal ranking. It is, she does use a personal ranking. We don't really know yet what the ranking is based on yet though. Okay, so
just now and named it as personal building. Personal building as for line 22 and also line 26 to 27.
Personal what?
Personal building.
Personal building?
Building. His reference, willing, W-I-L-L-I-N-G, willing.
The personal willing.
Personal willing.
Okay, I'm not really sure what that means, personal willing. Personal interest, again, there's that word of interest. Anyway, let's just look at the transcript a little bit more. Gemma says, so tell me about your ranking system. So she says, well, it was just based on how good I thought the college was and where I wanted to go the most. So that's a dead giveaway. How good I thought the college was. So there she's talking about what? I went to UPM because I thought it was the best college in Malaysia. Quality. Yeah, she's talking about quality of some sort. She's talking about quality. Okay, so we can perceive her. It's her perception of quality. So we can call this perceived quality. How good I thought the college was. Okay, and so as a result, where I wanted to go the most. Okay, so her ranking is based on that, essentially. Did anybody have anything different there? I know, Junji, you mentioned personal willing. I guess you mean willingness, or her willingness to go to that particular university. Anyone have anything else for that? Any different codes?
Prof,
Yeah.
can
Yes, Prof.
personal preferences on 26, 27?
Okay, personal preferences. Yeah, because we already had that code from last time, right? Personal preference. You could use personal preference there, because where I want to go the most definitely refers more to the personal preference part, I think. I think the first part of that, how good I thought the college was, I mean, the fact that she mentions that I think that there's a strong connotation to quality there. So I think we can be pretty sure, pretty safe, pretty confident that that's referring to quality. But this part here, where I wanted to go the most, yeah, I think that's definitely speaking to personal preference. Okay. So I think that's a good way of coding it. Anyone have anything else different there?
Prof, I don't have anything different, but can I go back to the thing that you mentioned about sounded interesting just now?
Sure.
For example, if I found something like this during doing my analysis, and I thought that maybe I need to call this person back and ask him or her, why is she saying things like that? Or does it mean what I understand? Where do I put her answer? Is it another transcript? How do I manage the new information?
Oh, you can, I mean, you can make that, just write that up somewhere, write it in your memo or whatever. You know, it doesn't matter where you put it. You can put it anywhere, as long as you, as long as you record it somewhere. Now this is, but let's backtrack. That's a good question, Sheena. Thank you for asking that. But let's backtrack. The purpose, one of the purposes of doing member checking is for this. Okay, so after you've done the interview, you transcribe the interview. Okay, one of the ways we do member checking is that after we've done the transcription, we send the transcript to the respondent and ask them to read through and make sure the transcript has been recorded accurately. Okay. But before you do that, you can, like I said, you can first read the transcript, right? And then, so before you send it back to them, you can identify if there's anything like this. Sounded interesting. And you can make a note on the transcript. What does this mean? And then when you send it to them for member checking, they can respond back as they're looking over the transcript, they can respond to you there. Okay. So you can sort of kill that bird with a stone, kill that bird with two stones, whatever they call it. Okay, you can sort of knock that out, you know, clear that up before you even really begin analysis by doing member checking. Okay, so member checking is a very, very useful tool to handle issues like this. All right, so just be aware of that.
Okay, Prof, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Professor, we talked about the sound interesting, and then what about named it as subjective feeling?
Sounded interesting, subjective feeling.
Yes.
Okay, well, it is a subjective feeling, but everything here is a subjective feeling. So that's that kind of a code is not, it's not very, it doesn't really speak to what the data is actually saying, because literally everything here is a subjective, is a form of a subjective feeling. Okay, so again, it's about being descriptive about what the data is saying. Okay, so I would say subjective feeling is not going to really, it doesn't tell us much. You know, the code subjective feeling, I mean, all of this is really subjective feeling. Okay, so try not to run too far away from the data itself, Junji.
So in the first level, we need to be concrete, right?
It's best to be concrete, yes, because again, when you read that later, when you read that code, what does that code mean? Right? Because the whole point is that you're going to take these codes, you're going to begin to combine them into larger concepts called categories or themes or whatever you want to call it, but usually it's categories. Okay, so to do that, if you have something that just says subjective feeling, it doesn't really capture what the data is saying. How are you supposed to develop categories from that? It's very difficult. Okay. And even just the word feeling, I mean, yes, it's a feeling, but describe the feeling. Describe the feeling. Give it life. Give it, you know, give it some meaning, all right? So try not to run too far away from the data. Okay, so is there another code that someone would like to? Okay, Masni, no problem. I read your message there. So what's the next code? Anyone have another code?
Line 39.
Everyone talks. Sorry, Augustine, what did you say?
Said 38 to 39.
30 to 39?
38.
Oh, 38.
39.
38, 39.
Nearness to home.
Okay, okay, yeah. So, and they're like, okay, but I decided then that I want to be closer to home. So I chose Duke. So yeah, so that's, again, we see this is the second time we've seen this, right? Okay, so that's why you're asking about closer to home or location.
Yeah, will you say, okay, you can say closer to home or?
Yeah, remember open coding, first level coding, if you're not sure, it's no problem.
Yeah.
Put both.
Nearness to home, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so again, if you want to do in vivo coding, you'd use closer to home.
Closer to home, okay.
Or in vivo coding, right? Because it's her words.
Yeah, yeah. Words.
But if you want to be a bit more conceptual, you can just put location.
Nearness to home, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Line number.
Oh, sorry, Nazrul. I think you got muted. Hold on a second. Oh, sorry, Nazrul. Go ahead.
Line number 29.
29.
Support. Best college.
Okay, so she says, so the college that I was like, oh, this is the best college if I get in.
Yeah.
But I probably won't. It was like a reach school is #1. Again, this is very thick American teenage language. It's hard to understand. And this is a very, if you look at the way it's been transcribed, this is a very verbatim transcript. In other words, they're really writing the way the person's speaking. Okay, so it's a little bit tricky, the language. Actually, what she's saying here, this is the best college. Again, she's referring to the best college in terms of her ranking system. So again, here she's actually referring to the perceived quality again. Okay. And again, I see now, this is where your own personal experiences help you to understand the data. Okay, because I grew up in America and I am familiar with this kind of language, I know what she's talking about. Okay, because we used to speak the same way when I was her age. We used to say the same things. So like a reach school. Okay, so for example here, the reach school refers to the school or the university that, you know, it's really hard to get in. You probably won't get in, but you try anyway. It's like, you know, you're reaching for it, you know, but but you try anyway. Okay, so it's called the reach school. Okay, now if you're not familiar with American dialect of English, you're not going to know that. All right, so this is why language is very important. So best college here, she's referring actually here to perceived quality. So again, we can code this again if we wanted to. We could code this again as perceived quality. All right. So it's not really referring to support. It's referring to the quality or the best college in terms of quality. All right. And see here, Gamma even asked her, so what are your reach schools? Okay, reach schools. In other words, those schools that are just really tough, really hard to get into, you know, but you try anyway because you never know, maybe you get in. Okay, so you apply for it. Okay, so like Yale's an Ivy League school, very hard to get into, but she tried anyway. So here she's giving us the rundown of her ranking system. Okay, and then like Augustine mentioned here, she mentions about being close to home. Okay, so what is the next code?
Line number 34, Northwestern location.
34, Northwestern.
34, yeah.
Oh, see, no, okay, again, this is language. Northwestern, she's talking about Northwestern University. That's actually the name of a college. And it's in Chicago, the city of Chicago. So here, what she's referring to is not a location, it's an actual name of a university. So it's Northwestern University. Okay. So
Okay.
another example of language, being sensitive to language. So this is I think last week somebody asked about when do you translate? I think Junji, you asked this question about when do you translate your interviews, okay? This is a perfect example of why you try to keep the interview in the native language when you're analyzing, okay? This is a perfect example, right? So that you can, all these little nuances in the language help you to really understand the data, okay? So that's why it's best for you to analyze it in the spoken language, okay? Only if you need to do you translate immediately. Do all the analysis first and then just translate what you want to communicate, what you want to convey in your report, all right? But analyze in the language that, first of all, is spoken by the respondents, the language that you're most familiar with, right? So you can pick up on all these nuances in the language, okay? So this is a perfect example of that, of why it's best not to translate too soon.
Prof?
Yeah.
What about line 44 to 45?
44 to 45. Okay, so now we get into another vague, this is another vague statement by Haru. She's very vague in the way she speaks. Even I have a hard time analyzing this data, okay? But I just want to show you this because it's important that you see that you're going to get people that speak different ways. Some speak very clearly, some speak very, in very vague ways like this, okay? So actually 44, so what is your code for 44, 45?
Mine is refuse to be in the same college with high school friends because I
Okay,
believe
now.
that is personal or I don't know. Is it just me or yeah?
Okay, so that's fine. So how did you say it? Does not want to be in
The same college with
as
high school friends. Yes.
Okay, now you may choose later to shorten that code. It's a little bit long, okay? But to start with, it's fine. It's okay to start like that. A lot of people, they also do what's called pre-coding. And sometimes it's easier if you go through the transcript and you do codes like this that are not, they're sort of in between a code and a statement. I mean, you're just describing what's there in the data. And then what they'll do is they'll go back and they'll look at all these, like this one here, like you just said, and they'll convert it to an actual code. Okay, so it's like a pre-coding almost. And so that's a totally acceptable way of doing it as well, if that helps you, because sometimes just to get the code right, it's like so frustrating, right? So first, just describe the way you see the data, and then go back and try and code it. Okay, so yeah, I think that's a very good way of capturing that. We can maybe code it a bit differently, but here, when she talks about her fifth choice, and it really starts here. Okay, so her explanation about her fifth choice. Okay, so she says, and my fifth choice. Sorry.
Like for the one that that she said everyone else in my high school was going to there, and I think we can say it is alumni in high school.
Okay, alumni in high school. Okay, yeah, but don't make sure you don't take it out of context. In other words, look at the whole sentence. Okay,
Line number 39.
Okay, hang on, Mr. Nazrul, hang on, yeah. So it says there, the context of this starts in line 39. So she says, and my fifth choice was Carolina. Okay, and Carolina means the University of North Carolina, actually, but for short she says Carolina. But I decided, remember, these girls are all from the state of North Carolina. Okay, so so she says, but I decided I didn't want to go there, sort of like even before I applied, because I knew, like, I guess this is American teenager kind of thing. I knew like everyone else in my high school was going there. Okay. And I'm really glad I didn't choose it, because even when I go back and visit my friends there, they only hang out with their school friends. And I'm glad I went somewhere else, because a lot of times in high school, I felt like, oh, I worked so hard for this. I don't want to end up the same place as everyone else. Okay. So the first thing she's talking about here is that, okay, I didn't want to go there because I knew like everyone else in my high school was going there. So she wants to avoid, okay, she wants to avoid the people that she went to high school with, just like Shahira mentioned in line 44. So she mentions it first here. Okay, and then she explains herself why. Right, so when she goes back to visit, they only hang out with their school friends. Right, I'm glad I went somewhere else because a lot of times I feel like, oh, I don't want to be in the same place as everybody else. So she wants to be in a new environment, a different environment than the people that she went to school with, high school with. Okay, so you could code this part here the same as, you can use the same code, or you could really make it just one big code. You can highlight the whole thing and code it as Shahira coded it here. All right. That's also, I think that's also perfectly acceptable as well.
Okay, Prof, line 30, 31, and 32.
31 and 32.
Yes, 30, 31, and 32.
Okay, so what's the code there?
Yeah, competition. I can see there are elements of competition that higher rich school where the higher number of friends are present, then there is element of competition, element of trying to compete with each other.
Okay, but this reach school doesn't refer to anything about friends. Okay, what it refers to is, yes, these are very competitive schools. Okay, these are very competitive. So it refers to her, like what she said here about perceived quality. Okay. Yeah, she's elaborating on it, in other words. Okay, so the reach school is how she perceived, those are the best colleges. Like she mentions here, this is the best college. It was my reach school. In other words, it was the reach school. It was the hardest one to get into. It was the best one. Okay, so she's really just elaborating on perceived quality. Okay, so it's not really a new code. It's really just an elaboration on that same code related to quality. Okay, so Najwa asked, can I use code friends preferences? Friends preferences? Najwa, can you explain that? What do you mean by friends preferences? That sounds like the preferences of the friends.
She doesn't want to go to the same school with her previous friends.
Yeah.
So
right.
I think I just want to code friends or old friends or something like that.
Okay, but what about old friends? In other words, be more descriptive. She wants to avoid old friends, right? Because if you say old friends as a code, that would imply that she wants to go there because she wants to be with her friends. Or it could mean either. We don't really know. Okay. So yes, you could, again, this is how you see it. That's fine. You could, for example, where here, maybe at the end of here, you could code it as old friends. Sure, absolutely. If it was me, and this is, again, this is where researchers, sees the data differently. I would, if we're going to use old friends, I would say avoid old friends, but that's just me. I like to be more descriptive in my coding. Okay, that's personal preference. All right, so we can I'll put a void slash. Okay. So yeah, you could code it that way. All right. Okay, so now if we go back and we look at it here, Haru is talking about she has this personal ranking based on her perceived quality of the universities that she wants to go to and some sort of unknown personal preference. She doesn't really explain what that means, okay? And then after that, she gives us a rundown of her ranking system and the rationale of the ranking system here, okay? And then she elaborates a little bit on that ranking system by explaining her choices. So one is about being closer to home, right? One is, one's at the top of her reach schools, perceived quality, again, reach schools. And then she talks about being closer to home. And then she talks about avoiding her old friends or avoiding her high school friends, okay? And so that's sort of a way of, again, you want to make sure you don't lose track of the bigger picture. So when you do coding, even though coding, we're trying to sort of deconstruct the data into smaller parts, we don't want to lose track of the whole, okay? So after doing this, for research question 1, I may come down here and write a memo to myself, giving an overview of Haru's response to research question 1, like I just did, a summary, okay? That sort of tells a synopsis of how Haru how research question 1 is answered through the eyes of Haru. Okay, so you know she has a ranking system, personal ranking system, you know, based on blah blah blah. Okay, and then like I just said, you just sort of write it that way. Okay, so it's really important that we do both, because if we just do the coding, we will lose sight of the bigger picture. Then later when we go to write up our findings, we just have a bunch of codes that have no meaning, because they're not connected. They don't tell a story, in other words. Okay, so after you do your coding should tell you should be able to tell a story with your coding. Okay, so never lose track of the whole. You'll read that, we'll come across that a lot in literature. Okay, coding without losing track of the whole. Okay, so storytelling. Okay, so that's pretty much Haru's findings in a nutshell. Okay, now from there we can go back to our, oops, not that one, our analysis. Okay, and we can go back to our code book that we started last week. Okay, and so which codes now do we have that fit with Haru's data? Any of these? Do any of these codes fit with Haru's data?
Location.
Personal preference.
Okay, so let's. Sorry, I heard Chai-Eng first. So we'll just start with location. Okay, so we have location. Location. Okay, so let's just copy this one. Put this in our. Okay, so now we've got another data excerpt for location. Okay, so this is Haru. $38.39. All right. Any others? Did we say personal preference? Did we say personal preference?
Yeah. I did mention personal preference just now.
So just for the sake of exercise, let's put in personal preference. Oops, I got too many files open. Okay, personal preference. Oh, that's not the right one. This one. Personal preference. Just code this. 2627. Okay, personal preference. Oh, 627. All right. Okay, so we've got two repeating codes already. Oops. Any others? So personal ranking, that's a new code, right?
Yeah.
Does personal ranking refer or resonate with any of these other codes that we came up with? No, I guess not.
No.
I was going to say maybe quality of degree, but no, it's different.
I thought personal ranking and personal preference are, you know, you rank it according to your preference, right?
I think so as well.
Okay, so it's the same data, so we'll just leave it here. We'll just leave it under personal preference because it was based here. Oh, you're referring to the actual mention about ranking. Up here, you mean this part? This one here?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put this also under personal preference. Is that what you're saying? Okay, this is 23, 25.
I think it should be fine.
Okay, 23, 25. Okay, so now we've got personal preference developing here. Our code is developing here. I guess that's it, right? Personal preference, closer to home. One more. Oh yeah, our friends one. Okay, so this is definitely a new code, right? So this one, since it's a new code, we're going to add it to our code book as a new code. Now, the fact that it's a new code means what? In terms of our, oops, sorry. Well, just for the sake of brevity, we'll call it avoiding old friends. Okay, just to make it concise.
It means not saturated yet.
Exactly. Thank you, Jang. Yeah, exactly. It means we're not saturated yet. We have not reached saturation point because we have new codes coming in, right? New codes coming into the findings, which means that we are not yet saturated, which we, of course, would never be saturated after just 2 interviews. But since it's a small study, not a lot of data, okay? And so that's Haru. Can somebody tell me the line numbers for that? What are the line numbers for that? What was it? Sorry, I couldn't hear Shahir.
Line 44.
44. 45.
Yeah. Yeah, 44 to 45.
Okay, great. All right. So now we can see our code book is developing. Now, we've done 3 interviews. All right, is it possible that any of these, do we see the possibility that any of these codes can be combined into larger categories?
Quality cannot.
Quality. Quality of what?
Quality of degree and quality of university. Is it not?
Where's our code? We have quality of degree as a code. I don't see quality university as a code. Do we have? No.
Perceived.
Now, one thing we always want to avoid in qualitative analysis is data forcing. Okay, data forcing is where you make connections in the data that are not really there because you're just trying to make it fit. Okay, if it's not a clear merging or integration based on some clear semantic evidence, don't force it. You know, leave them alone as codes for now. Okay, especially if it's early on. Right, as you collect more data, as your code book develops, you'll start to see the connections. But if there are any obvious connections, you can begin to merge them into categories. I'm thinking there's one here. Oops. Now, remember, if you go back to Mary Catherine's interview, right, she talked about all of these. Sorry. You have this one. You have this one. And you have this one, and you have this one. Did anybody see any connections there? Okay, first one, this one. The intelligent student body and modest students. Is there a connection there?
The students.
One is body, one is students.
One is what?
One is the body and another one is students. It's different, right?
No, student body means the group of students. It's a term used in English for for university.
Okay.
So they say that instead of the, what do you call it? Like all the students on campus, they refer to as the student body, like the students collective, the students collectively, they call the students. So I removed that. I didn't realize it was a jargony word. So you have intellectually intelligent students or academically serious students, and then you have modest students. These are 2 codes. Now, how could they fit together into a larger category?
Students.
learning environment, learning.
Well, it's not really talking about learning, it's talking about the students, right? It's describing the students.
Student category.
Characterization.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be something like, check with this one first. Yeah, so student characteristics. You could use something like student characteristics to describe it, to start with. Now, we would say student body because it's the students on campus. So I'll just use that term. It's an easier term to talk about the students as a collective, right? Okay. So you could combine both of these. Again, this is just an exercise, so don't get too hung up if you don't agree with just showing how we go about doing this. All right. So the characteristics of the students. This is something that was mentioned. Okay. Now we have to have some way of making it known, showing that this is a category, not a code. So we're going to put these in caps. Okay. Put this in capitals. Okay, so now we are developing our categories. All right. And I'll put a number next to it. Okay, we've got 2 codes under this one. Now the rest of the codes. Now, if we don't see any connection with the rest of the codes, we just leave them. Just leave them alone. Don't do anything with them. Okay. Although I think that there's more connections to be made. Again, when Mary Catherine was talking about the camp, remember she was talking about the culture. So so tell me about the culture of the place, or the culture of the campus, the university. So she mentioned a bunch of things at once. So she made a couple comments about the students, but then she also talked about the campus itself, right? So she described elements of the campus environment, the campus environment.
Yeah, campus environment.
So these 3 definitely speak to the campus environment, right? And if we go again, if we think back to our research question, what were the elements of the university that they liked or that drew them, to the university, why they chose the university. So these were clearly reasons given for that research question. So again, for the sake of exercise, we can, I think, identify this as a second category. Even though it's from the same participant, it's okay. Because again, you're not focusing on who said it, you're just focusing on the content, right? To build up your categories. So we can just call it the campus. I'm just trying to look at how we coded this last time. Yeah, campus environment. We just call it, campus environment. Okay, so now we've got 2 categories. Now for our code book, like for your exercise, for your assignment, now, since we have categories, we have to begin to define the categories, right? And the reason we do that is that when we come across new codes, we want to know whether those codes really fit under those categories. So if we have a clear definition of the category, it'll be much easier to determine whether those codes fit under those categories, okay? So we can, building on these 2 codes here, we can come up with a definition for student body characteristics, right? I'm not going to do it now, but just to show you. And the same thing here for campus environment, okay? So campus environment means, okay? And then you define it based on these 3 codes that we have, okay? You can also bring in from your literature review, you can also bring in information from the literature on campus environment to help you define the category, okay? But these definitions are very important, okay? Very important. For the next round of coding, they'll help you to determine whether the new codes fit under those categories, all right? So that's why in the codebook assignment, I've asked you to also do those definitions for the categories. All right. So we've got 2 categories, and we've got some remaining codes here that don't have a home yet. All right. They are free codes, if you will. But we will see after the next interview, we will have more categories, inshallah. Okay, I think we are out of time. Are there any questions? Or does anybody have anything that they don't agree with, or they don't see, they don't understand?
Oh, Prof, I just have one question.
Yeah, sure.
Maizura here, Prof. Prof, is it when we do this coding, is it the same as we do content analysis coding for us in media? Usually we do content analysis research. So it's, I don't know, it looks about the same how we do for content analysis, either quanti or quali. Prof,
Yeah.
is it the same?
Most qualitative research can be categorized, the vast majority of qualitative data analysis can be categorized as either a form of thematic analysis or content analysis. So content analysis usually doesn't go beyond sort of very descriptive categories. Thematic analysis is supposed to be more model theory, conceptual as a goal, whereas content analysis usually remains at a very descriptive level. Okay, so content analysis, sometimes you just see in content analysis, they just develop codes really, or very simplistic categories that are very descriptive. Because again, content analysis, you're just trying to describe the content. You're not really trying to theorize. Okay, this code book, this is just the beginning of the code book. As this code book develops, these categories, we just developed these two categories, they're going to develop into bigger conceptual themes, right? That are going to explain the data, right? Because this is thematic analysis. But if I'm doing content analysis, I may just leave it at student body characteristics, campus environment. I don't go beyond that. Okay, so thematic analysis just tends to be more conceptual. Content analysis tends to, the goal is really just to capture what's there descriptively in the data.
Hey, Prof, thank you.
Okay, sure, Maizura. Any other questions? So we'll stop there. We have one more. Transcript for this research question, and then we will move on to the next research question. So I think probably in the 12th week, the class for week 12, the lab class, we will hopefully finish off this research question and then the next research question. And then I think by then you'll have a very good idea of what a code book, how to develop the code book. Okay, so I think with this though, at least you can get started on your assignment 5 if you want, on your codebook assignment. I think there's enough here to get you started at least, so if you want to. All right.
Professor, assignment 5 due date week 14.
Yes, week 14.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, 9 o'clock.
Okay, Professor.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
About 7
everyone.
p.m.
7 p.m. Sorry, Nazrul, I forgot. You're not different time zone. Sorry. Okay, jumpa lagi. Inshallah, see you next week. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you, Prof.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Good night.